In the last few years, the term vampire and its significance has changed quite a bit. No longer do people think of Bram Stoker's Dracula and his night fiends. Oh no, here comes the world of Twilight and other laughable knockoffs. In a way, these new generation vampires aren't completely off, but they seem to put much more emphasis on attractiveness than anything else. That is not to say that I hate vampire animes and manga. I thoroughly enjoyed Hellsing and even enjoyed some of these hip and new vampires. Hello audience, today on Yvern's Box we'll be looking at one series that has some of these hip and new vampires, Rosario plus Vampire, a series whose genres include, wait for it, harem, oh we know this is going to be a story driven one, school life, yup, here comes the original setting, and action? Before saying anything else, let me first make clear that Rosario plus Vampire shouldn't be watched for the plot. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the plot is bad. The story follows a young high school boy, Sukune Aono, who starts his high school life in a bizarre high school. Yes, I said high school 3 times in that sentence. Think about that. The reason why this high school is strange is that everyone there, including the students and the teachers, are all supernatural monsters. You will find werewolves, witches, zombies, lizardmen, etc. The problem here is that the main character is not a monster, but a human. Enter dramatic piano music. So what will he do to keep his identity secret? Well, get help from various girls, of course. And that's where the harem aspect kicks in. Now the story is separated into 2 parts in the manga, with part 1 being called Rosario plus Vampire, and part 2 being called Rosario plus Vampire Season 2. While the anime is split into Rosario plus Vampire and Rosario plus Vampire Capu 2. But the anime has not yet caught up to the ending of the series, and there is no confirmation on there ever going to be. For simplicity's sake, I'll be referring to the manga for the story. Part 1 feels very typical of any harem series. There are a bunch of girls that get introduced with the time being divided among them. The main protagonist and his harem gets put into different situations, ranging from sexual to violent. Some comedy here, some action there, some romance here, done. The first half of the season 2 felt somewhat like this too, but the story becomes more serious and more emotionally driven the closer it gets to the end. Nearing the end, the originally spread apart action aspects of the show become more condensed, and this makes for an interesting turning point. The series, however, does not turn worse from then, neither does it turn better. For one, people who really needed some action can breathe easily now, but those who just wanted more to Love Ru-esque content might have felt ignored. Either way, the series keeps its own standard of quality, whether that be high or low. However, the ending was somewhat depressing, and not because of the story. After 10 years of following the series, the plot concluded way too quickly and vaguely. It was much too rushed and felt like it was trying to meet a deadline rather than to reward the readers. Then again, I've seen worse endings in other series, but still. Like all harem series, Rosario plus Vampire has a male protagonist surrounded by many different females. Of course, there are some other filler characters, but those are unimportant. The females include your usual array of lolly, opai, tsundere, kudere, crazy, slutty, cheeky, etc. But like all other harem series, there's a single female that seems to take up a larger spotlight, Mocha Akashiya. Mocha is a pink-haired vampire that is also, unsurprisingly, the new hottest girl in school. But of course, she easily falls for a protagonist very early on into the story, and she becomes part of his life. Mocha's unique characteristic is that by taking off or putting on a necklace piece named the Rosario, she can turn into a colder and cooler version of herself, or by putting it back on, turn back into her usual loving and caring self. This makes for a somewhat interesting discussion on who exactly is the real Mocha and who is the fake. Then we have our main male protagonist, Sukune. Like I said, Sukune is a human high school boy. This means that in contrast to everyone else around him, he is far weaker, slower, and overall less useful. But like any good harem king should be, he has a kind heart and girls fall for him very easily. Season 1 of the Rosario manga made him out as a huge weakling. While he does have a redeeming point being that he actually sticks around a fight, he usually ends up being protected or saved by the members of his harem. Towards Season 2, however, this does get remedied, and he becomes an overall likable character. Apart from those two, we have the other girls who make up the rest of the harem. Each one has their own perks and quirks, and will probably satisfy all of your harem needs. The manga started back in 2004 and the complete storyline ended on March 2014. Although it did take 10 years, there really isn't an overabundance to read. In total, there are 24 volumes to read, or about 70 chapters give or take. And each chapter really doesn't take all that long. The art for Season 1 was decent and enough to make the manga an easy read, but Season 2 art is simply on a whole new level. Season 2 really was a level up. It got prettier, it felt more polished, and, most importantly, it was more detailed. The anime adaptation was made by the illustrious Studio Gonzo, best known for works like Yvern, Full Metal Panic, and Welcome to the NHK, among many others. Now, as much as I don't want to say this, the anime wasn't really good. The animation was alright, but nothing to applaud. The music was just there, and there were heavy modifications to the source material's plot. Now, in and of itself, modifying the plot isn't necessarily a bad idea, but when you compare the manga and the anime, you just ask yourself, what was the point of modifying it? But with all that said, the first season of the anime was alright because it was very harem and romance focused, since it adapted the harem heavy part of the manga. But season 2 was showing the same old colors, which ended up boring much of the original audience. Finally, it should be noted that the anime has yet to adapt the whole series yet, meaning that it still hasn't finished yet. But there has been no announcement for a third season, so no one knows if that will ever even come out. Now, I got to admit, I personally really enjoyed Rosario plus Vampire, but this is one of those series that if you want to explain why you like it, it is near impossible. I mean, nothing about it really stands out, yet it is still really enjoyable. But I have to say that overall, although R plus V wasn't anything extraordinary, it was a good package of content. For series that gave off a similar vibe as Rosario, I would point you towards To Love Ru, for a much more sexual, yet similar series, and towards the familiar Zero, which gave off a near identical vibe. Anyway guys, this was my review of the Rosario plus Vampire series, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm currently working on a certain project that should be released in not too long, but until then expect even more reviews from me. Anyhow, this has been Yvern, and my box.